So what we are going to do from this point on is to have a website that we're going to use to track everything that you're doing in science. This is kind of like what we're doing with our science journal, except for I don't think we do our science journal very well, and that's partly my fault because it seems like sometimes I tell you to put stuff in there and other stuff we don't, and other stuff is too big or we have to tape it in. So the whole purpose of this science website portfolio for you is to have a place where you have all of your stuff so that you can go back to and review. And before when I said, well, test is tomorrow, there's not really a good way to study. This hopefully provides a better way for you to look back at what you've done, and it's done in an orderly way. The other thing is to showcase what you've learned. And I don't think your science journal currently does that. Your science journal has you write down some of the stuff that we did in class, but it doesn't really take the next step to say, well, what did you learn from that? Okay, so this is kind of meant to do both of those things. We're going to get it set up today. I'm going to give you a chance to kind of play around with it a little bit. And as we do so, I'm going to show you the different parts of it. Okay, so the way that I did this, and I'll follow this sheet of paper that I've given to you, and those watching at home have that same thing linked for them. So the first thing was for me to copy this website. So I made one. I made a copy of it and shared it with Kaylee. I made a copy of it. I shared that copy with Trey. I made another copy. I shared it with Caleb. I thought it was going to be a whole lot easier than that. That you guys were just going to be able to go make a copy and do your own thing, but whatever. It took me a few extra minutes, but now we've got that all pushed out to you. You all have your own copy. I am also an editor on your website. Okay, so just like a Google Doc, you have access to changing it. I have access to changing it. So I've got a list of all 18 or 17 of you guys right here. So right now, all of your websites look exactly the same, but they're actually all 17 different websites. Does that make sense? You're going to change it. It's going to look kind of similar, but it's going to be very personalized for you. Okay? Let's go to the second section of your sheet where it says students rename and publish. Okay, so students should open their site that has been shared with them. You're already there. The title on the home page says Mr. Gum's portfolio, but I'm looking at Abby's right now. So Abby's going to go in here, she's going to click here, and she's going to change it to Abby Monday's portfolio. You're going to change yours to Margaret Evenson's portfolio, and so on. Go ahead and do that. By the way, raise your hand if you're familiar with working in Google Sites. Okay, so that'd be another reason I'm doing this, because I think it gives you another piece of technology that you learn along the way. Most of you aren't familiar with it, and that's fine. Okay, Abby Mondays, that portfolio belongs to you, right? So put an apostrophe after Monday, and then center it.
How do I do that? Oh, okay, I know.
See it? Okay, are we all there?
No. Yeah.
Oh, are we able to make it like, it's only like, so it's only us that can see it? Like,
Yeah, we'll get into the publishing and what that means. Right now, you and me are the only ones that can see it, really.
okay, so like we can make it so like the whole world can't be able to see it.
Correct. And ours is set, I believe right now ours is set so just Beautiful Savior people can see it, but even then, nobody else is really going to be looking at it, except for you, me, and maybe mom and dad if they're helping you study. Okay, so now the second bullet point under there says click the publish button, which is up in the top right hand corner. Abby, go ahead and click that. Oh, I'm sorry, you're seeing it on your screen. I'm not seeing it up here though, because you're working, so I'll have to do it up here too. When you click the publish button, you should get something that looks like this, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Some people have mistaken this and they think that this is their website. That's not the web address. You can't just copy and paste this because that's for your individual account. So really what you're going to do here is change that last little section That's the last part of your website address. Okay, so Abby, I'm not sure why it's, Abby, you're gonna have to do this, I'll show you an example, but it says Earth and Sun portfolio. We can probably just change that to Earth-Sun-Abby Monday, or something very similar to it. And you'll notice as I did that, underneath here, smaller and in gray, take a look on the board if you're not looking, this is going to be the actual website address. https://slights.google.com, beautiful-savior.com, and then you see Earth Sun Abby Monday. If you want to change that, it's Earth Sun, whatever you change it to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you're just changing that last part of it. This part is like stuck because it's part of our network. Abby, I'm going to cancel that. You can do that on your own. Raise your hand if you're done with that. Okay, all you're doing was changing website or portfolio, change it to your last name. So now the thing is, you've made a change to this, and you've made a change to the name of your published site, but it's not actually published yet. It's basically like you just made a rough draft, but you haven't turned it into your final copy yet. In order to do that, we're going to go down to the third section here, where it says making changes to your site. And the first bullet there is really important, which is why I've got it in capital letters and bolded. Changes you make to your site are not visible unless you press the publish button. And then I made an explanation. This is extremely important to remember, because if you update a web page as an assignment, which I'll give you, like we just did an activity. So now you got to go and plug that stuff into your web page. It's due tomorrow. And you go and you make all these changes, but you don't press publish. I can't see it. And then I say, sorry, you get 0 points. But I made the changes. And I say, sorry, you didn't. Okay, making the changes means making the changes and pressing that publish button. Okay, so let's do that now. Go ahead and go up to the publish button. And when you do so, it'll bring this up again where it says, well, what do you want to call the thing? And when you press publish, no, that didn't happen for you?
No. It says public with confidence.
Like, try publishing it.
Publish settings.
No, don't go read it.
Cooper's got it.
We just put- I think
Maybe it's because I'm opening yours up. Yeah.
it's just, you didn't have it published before, so we already had it published and then we published.
Okay, so once you got it published the first time, maybe it doesn't ask you every single time. And actually,
Cooper's got it.
review, change, publish settings.
Says there are no unpublished changes to this review.
Editors must review and review changes before publishing.
Yeah, so like, if.
Oh, okay, so Abby, don't touch yours for a second.
Okay.
I'm gonna add 111. So that's a change that I just made. Now if I press publish, now it'll look like this. It's gonna ask you, it's basically saying, are you sure you wanna publish this? So it'll show you, here's what it looked like, here's what it currently looks like, here's what it looks like now with the 111. Do you really want that? And you're gonna say, yes, let's publish it like that.
Cooper's got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't really want that, so I'm gonna make another change. And if I would just close things out right now, it would still have the 111 when I come back, or when somebody else looks at it. So since I made that change, I have to press publish. Do I really wanna make that change? Yes. Okay?
Oh, that's kind of cool.
We could skip all that and make it so it doesn't ask you that second step every time, but I think it's probably good for you to pause and think about it. Caleb,
The ampersand in the title looks kind of weird.
which type? Oh, yeah, it's a different font. All right, so let's talk about that. So still, in the making changes section, the second bullet point says if you want to, you can change the themes to this. Over on the right-hand side here is basically where you can make different changes. Let's go to themes. If I wanted to make this the same kind of theme but a different color, You know, you can do stuff like that. If I wanted to actually change kind of the way the layout and font are, you could go like that. Okay, so they got different built-in options for you. I don't care if you change all that stuff, personalize it a little bit, but I do want you to keep the same general template. What I mean by that, I'm gonna go up here for a second. Abby, don't mess with yours for a second, okay? I'm gonna go up here for a preview. Okay, this is what Abby's looks like. This is what yours looks like. Where I've got all these built-in pages on the left. I know you guys are playing with the themes. I'll give you a chance to do that, but look up here for a second. So I've built this entire web page, and you see we've got investigation 1, the sun. We've already talked about that. Planetary systems, we've talked about that. Earth's atmosphere, we've talked about that. I put those in there so that if I do this again in future years, I've already got it built in. We're not even going to mess with those. We're already past that. We are going to start now on heating Earth. And if I click that little button down, you'll see there's not just heating the Earth, but there's part 1, there's part 2, there's part 3, part 4, and part 5. I've got all this stuff listed on the side. I want you to keep yours that way, okay? Just so they're all kind of the same. You can, if you're making your own Google site for something else, you also have the option to like put them up, going up across the top, and they look a little bit different. But I'd like you guys to all keep them there, just so that when I'm going and looking in there, I don't have to think about, you know, which place I'm going. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's take a look at this. You can pause yours and look up the board. We'll use Abby's as the example because yours looks exactly the same. We've got investigation 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, 4. What did I just do? Sweet. 4 and 5. If you go to those main investigation pages, that's like the starting page for each investigation, and look at what it shows you. I already plugged this in, just kind of explaining what's the purpose of what we're trying to learn. The fact that there's 4 parts or 3 parts or 5 parts, depending on which investigation it is, and usually some major picture that kind of represents the main themes of what we're learning. Okay? Beyond that, there's not much to it. What you guys are going to do is going to make changes to these 4 different parts. So over the next couple weeks, we're going to be doing Heating the Earth Part 1, and we're going to do some activities in class. And after we're done with those activities, you're going to go to this web page that's already set up for you. You don't need to create another web page. And you're going to change what I've got listed in here. Every single one of these pages, Caleb, looks the same. Okay, so they've got this same template. You're just going to go in and make changes. Okay, so let's look at what one of these looks like. The first part is always going to be the driving question. Okay, and we've talked about all sorts of different driving questions. What's the main question the big overarching question that we're trying to understand as we go through something? So I'm going to give that to you in class, and that's what you can put in here. That's to help you kind of focus on the main point of that of that part. And then over here, you're going to have a written part, just like you see. It's written out for you. It says in this section, you're going to replace this text with a description of what you did. Okay, so you're going to basically tell a story to yourself and to anybody else that sees this. Here's what we did in class. You know, if you think back to the planets one, Mr. Gum took a string and tied a tennis ball to the end of it and spun it around his head to represent a planet that's revolving around the sun. Okay, that you would write that out. You would also then take pictures of proof that you participated in the activities. Maybe it is something where it's an actual picture of me showing you something. Or maybe it's of you and your, 1 or 2 classmates where you're working on an activity. It might be one of the little half sheets of paper that we sometimes use where we've listed out some data and you take a picture of that. It's you proving to the world, yes, I was there in science class. Here's what I did. You're giving me kind of crazy eyes look. Do you have a question with that? All right. Yeah.
What are we supposed to take the these pictures with?
We'll get to that in a second with your Chromebooks.
I thought thought our Chromebooks were bad for that, and that's why you left us with the iPad until we were done recording.
Well, for making videos and stuff that, at the time, yes, it was. It's not super easy with these, but you can do them. For this purpose, it shouldn't be too big of a problem. Luke,
Is like the page like the investigation one? I know we already did some of that. Are we gonna have to go back and fill that out, or is
No.
like it just from?
we are starting here at investigation 4.
Okay, so but we can't delete those.
We're just gonna keep them in there.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the rest of the page. So you're gonna write about it. You're gonna take some pictures. I've got space in here just to kind of show you what it might look like with 3 pictures. So you're gonna take a picture and put it in the place of this. Picture in the place of this, picture in the place of this. You might end up with 4 pictures. You might end up with just 2. It kind of depends on how much and what we did in a certain part. Does that make sense? So don't see 3 pictures, go, I need another picture. You might not. Don't sit there and go, oh, I've got too many pictures. No, just add the ones that make sense to prove to the world what you did. Okay? So we've got the driving question, what's the main thing that we were trying to learn. You've got a written explanation and picture representation of what we did. And then you're going to answer the question. What did you actually learn? Not what you did, but what did you learn because of what you did? Okay, so it says in this section, you're going to replace this text with a detailed explanation of what you've learned. Your explanation should really answer this main question up above, right? If that's what we were trying to figure out. You did a bunch of stuff, now answer that question. You're also going to take a short, I should have put the word short in there, short self-reflection video. This is not the Braylon Collette 17 minutes of glory video, okay? This is probably like a maybe 45-second thing tops. It should be quick and to the point. Here's some things that you could have in the video that you're going to put here. In the video, speak clearly and fluently. Okay, you don't want a video of yourself where you're like mumbling and nobody can hear you. That's no good. Okay. Here's the content. You're going to provide a self-evaluation of your knowledge and effort from the section. So in other words, you showed us that you were here, that you participated. You showed us pictures of proof. How well did you actually grasp the information and the content? How much did you put forth effort? Be like, yeah, I was focused and I was a good teammate. Or there might be times where you have to admit, I was kind of sidetracked on a lot of this, and because of that, I didn't maybe understand it as well. Okay, so it's just a self-evaluation. You can say, I really liked what we did. I thought it was cool. And why? Or you might say, I kind of thought this part was boring. That's okay. But then again, explain what you learned. That part should be kind of similar to what you had written up above here. Okay? Are we good with that? Scrolling down, whenever we have a section, there's usually a part that we also read in our science textbook, an article. Some of those have been 2 pages, some of them have been 5 pages, and almost every article comes with a couple questions at the end. So I'm going to have you write out what are the articles that go along with what we learned. What did you learn from the article, which should be a little bit different than the entire activity. And then if there are questions, that you write your answer to the questions there. David.
The recording things.
Low battery. Thank you. And then over here, this additional resources is totally up to you. This is really a section meant for you to help study later. So if we did a Kahoot, that's a review of all this stuff, remind me, hey, Mr. Gum, can you share that link to the Kahoot with me? That might be something that you plug in here as a link. That way you can go back and at least review some of those questions. Or you might find something by just searching the web on your own. Hey, we're talking about planets. I found this cool thing. I want to plug it in here. That's up to you. Okay? Try to get at least 1 resource for every page. Could be 2, could be 3, could be 5. But try to get at least 1. Does that all make sense? Okay? So if you look at, that's what we'll do after heating Earth materials. That's the first part of this next investigation that we're getting into. If you go to part 2, conduction. Here's part 2, conduction. Well, it looks exactly the same, doesn't it? You got all those same parts. If I go to part 3, convection, it looks exactly the same. I just copied every single page so we had that template to work off of. Okay? So you'll answer the same types of questions, but you obviously are learning something different in each part. So what I want you to do now is to just simply play around with this, because a lot of you haven't used Google Sites. So on that first, and maybe you want to go back to one that we're not going to do at all. Investigation 1, shadow shifting. Go in here and you can, I'm in the wrong one here. I gotta get out of here. But you can work on editing, changing stuff. If you want things to be bold, you can make them bold. You can look at how to insert a picture, stuff like that. Caleb, to answer your question about taking pictures and videos, that's on the last part of the piece of paper that I gave you. It's how to use your Google Chromebook camera and video. We may need a little bit of extra work with how to actually upload those, but I think that should be all set in place for you. Okay, that's it.